President Donald Trump is warning Iran that time is running out. Joining us now is Benem Ben Taliblu, Iran Program Senior Director at the Foundation for Defence of Democracies. Thank you so much for your time. Look, a US strike against Iran could just be days away now as more warships arrive in the Middle East. And the president, of course, weighs up one of the most important decisions of his presidency. Donald Trump has been keeping Iran guessing about his intentions. Earlier this week, he told Axios that Tehran had reached out on numerous occasions and that Iran wants to make a deal. But it's, of course, unclear what Iran could offer, given that the regime is unlikely to release the thousands of protesters it has arrested and also unlikely to suddenly abandon its nuclear program. Overnight, Donald Trump has issued what could be the final warning to Iran, posting on Truth Social. A massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm and purpose. It is a larger fleet headed by the great aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln than that sent to Venezuela. Like with Venezuela, it is ready, willing and able to rapidly fulfill its mission with speed and violence if necessary. Hopefully, Iran will quickly come to the table and negotiate a fair and equitable deal. No nuclear weapons, one that is good for all parties. Time is running out. It is truly of the essence. As I told Iran once before, make a deal. They didn't. And there was Operation Midnight Hammer, a major destruction of Iran. The next attack will be far worse. Benem, what's going to happen here?
Great to be with you. I think President Trump has everybody right where he wants them, which is both allies and adversaries alike are left guessing. The president did seem to extend one final diplomatic off-ramp here. The question is, after having drawn 8 or 9 red lines not related to the nuclear program, not related to the missile program, and not even related to transnational terrorism, but rather to the horrible situation on the ground inside Iran throughout the month of January, there really is no nuclear deal to be had with a regime that has killed its own people this way. Oh, and by the way, doesn't have the uranium enrichment capacity to actually produce a nuclear bomb today, thanks to President Trump's historic and successful use of force just 6 months ago against the regime's enrichment facilities. So President Trump does have all eyes on him. The question is, will he use military force, and towards what larger political end will that force be applied?
If Donald Trump does decide to strike, the most likely targets are the commanders of the IRGC and the command centres. How strong is the IRGC right now?
Well, there have been some reports, as you mentioned, that talk about holding those responsible for the crackdown, and that's just not only the IRGC, which is the parallel ideological military that exists in Iran, but an element of its ground forces is this all-volunteer paramilitary unit reported in the several millions called the Basij. Underneath that, of course, there's also the law enforcement forces or the National Police, which has a subgroup called the Special Units, which have been particularly active against protesters. And lest we forget, it's not just Iranians from the regime killing the protesting population, but it's foreign Shia militias, reportedly Iraqi Shia militias, 3 of which are designated foreign terrorist organizations and have American blood on their hands, have reportedly crossed the border from Iraq into Iran and are active inside Iran on behalf of the Islamic Republic as well.
There are reports that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei will flee, that he'll flee Iran and potentially go down with the ship, so to speak. Do you expect that's going to happen?
I actually saw some of the reports earlier about a potential Assad option where Khamenei exits the country, flees to Russia, or one of the few places that might offer him such a home. But I actually don't see that as within the character of Iran's 86-year-old and highly ideological supreme leader. He's more likely to make you burn through the country to get him. His playbook really does seem to be going down with the ship and taking as much of the state's institutions with him. One wonders if thereby the U.S. might be able to avoid the cost of quote unquote burning through the country if political targeting is on the agenda for the Trump administration at all. That's an open question. But make no mistake, I think Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is someone who has lived his anti-American and anti-Israeli worldviews and doesn't seem to be the kind of person who would flee and be willingly, peacefully able to turn over power to democracy-seeking pro-Western and pro-Israel protesters.
Look, the known death toll from the crackdown on protesters is growing each day. A US-based group said that the number of people killed in the protest against the regime in Iran has exceeded 6,000. But an attack by the US on Iran, it would send a powerful message of support to the protest movement and would, of course, undoubtedly weaken the regime even further.
Certainly, I think at this point it would. The one real question Iranians have been asking when you can get a limited hold of them via either they directly call via landline or through fits and starts of internet connectivity is when will he strike? It's really the open question right now for so many Iranians. Iranians are a highly nationalistic population, but to the extent that they've now turned their heads abroad looking for some kind of a potential call in the cavalry moment, potentially from the Trump administration, potentially from Israel, who knows, to stand with them in their hour of need. Unlike many places in the Middle East, Iran hasn't had this level of state violence. And really, the 20th century hasn't seen this level of state violence across the world in such a short period of time. One unfortunately have to go back to the Holocaust, to the 1940s, 1941 in particular, Bob Yar in Ukraine, to see similar rates of a massive crackdown. And that's why I think so many Iranians are wondering, if not now, when.
Iran has ramped up its threats to retaliate and would see, Iran says it would see any attack as an all-out war. What response would we be, is it likely that we would see?
Well, the primary tool of deterrence by punishment for the Islamic Republic remains its ballistic missile force, which is largely assumed to be the biggest in the entire Middle East. We saw what these ballistic missiles could do during 3 separate missile exchanges, April, October 2024, and then June 2025 against Israel. But make no mistake, there are credible, well-layered allied and American air and missile defenses in the region that are largely able to intercept these. But even the 16% of Iranian ballistic missiles that were able to penetrate through Israel and allied layered air and missile defense in the region still did significant damage in Israel during the 12-day war. And it's really more of the threat or ability to destroy rather than to create, which is the Islamic Republic's only card here. It's that they could basically light parts of the region on fire. And that's why, to deter this Iranian move at deterrence by punishment, Washington is bringing more military assets to outpace and overmatch Iran's large ballistic missile force.
And Republican Senator Ted Cruz is calling on the US to arm Iranian protesters. In a post to X, he wrote, "We should be arming the protesters in Iran now for the Iranian people to overthrow the Ayatollah, a tyrant who routinely chants death to America, would make America much, much safer." What do you make of this?
I'm not sure about that. If the U.S. is going to be using the military option, it itself, qualified military professionals should be using the military option rather than trying to take a fairly moderate protesting population in the Middle East and trying to train them and give them arms. I think the Iranians are looking for that foreign military support, that promise that President Trump had offered them, that quote unquote help was on the way. That doesn't mean, barrels of Kalashnikovs, but that does mean, low intensity things that actually can help level the playing field between the street and the state, to fully turn the internet back on, to hold the repression apparatus accountable, to begin to pave the way to get this regime out of the Iranian people's way. These are not the first time Iranian people have been protesting against the Islamic Republic. It certainly won't be the last. But the question is, now that Washington has chosen to make this an issue about deterrence, about resolve, and about American credibility, will we be able to retain a pro-American population in Iran after we turn our back on them like this? That's an open question. And the way to fix that is not, pallets of AK-47s to protesters who have no experience with this. It is actually to have qualified military professionals and Western military support to provide air cover for protesting Iranians.
Ben Taleblu, Iran Program Senior Director at Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.